There we go. We're live.
Oh, now okay. Okay, well, sorry about that, everyone. Here, let me do this. Okay, so we're back again. I apologize for the delay, everyone. This is my first night on the job, so we're going to see how many things I can screw up all in one night, get it over with, no problem. We were having a great interview with Jockey Tony Black here. I'm sorry that you guys missed it, but I'm Jamie Martinez, wife of jockey Willie Martinez, former thoroughbred horse trainer. And I'm going to be helping out with the show from now on. And I promise I will go live properly from now on. And as I said, we have jockey Tony Black here, record-setting jockey, currently holds the Guinness World Records for the most wins in a row with 9 wins, has won over 5,200 races, and will soon hold another Guinness World Record for the oldest jockey in North America to win a race. You have promised us that on the last time that you were on the show, and you just promised again before we went live. So sorry to go through all this again.
Well, if I wait one more month, I'm 70 now. I'll be 71 in one more month. So sometime after September, I'll do it. And you know what? September's still good weather. I don't care if it's winter time. I rode a lot of winters. I've stayed in this area. So hopefully it'll be sometime in September. I'll be 71.
Ooh, and
that you mentioned the 9 consecutive winners. That record was set in 1932 by Albert Richards or Richards. I forget the gentleman's name, Jockey. And then I tied it in 98 or 93. I don't know. All the years run together. I tied. Never forget, I won the 9th consecutive race at Atlantic City Racetrack. I went back to Philadelphia Park, I think it was. That's Parks. It was Philadelphia Park at the time. And Phil Aristone walked up to me and he says, "Tone, you just tied a record that was 60-some years old." He says, "You're on a horse in the first race." He says, "You take off of him and ride my horse." He says, "because you can break the record." I says, "I can't take off the horse. The stewards aren't going to let me take off a horse to ride it. I'm named on the horse in the program to ride your horse." He says, "Don't worry about it. I already talked to the stewards. They said it's just fine." The stewards called me. They said, "Do you want to break the record?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "But the record wasn't designed and engineered and manufactured. The record was set, just the way it was set, 9 consecutive. Nobody planned it."
Sure.
I said, if I have a little regret, Phil Aristone's horse just galloped, and the horse I was on finished up the racetrack. And I'll never forget the name of Phil Aristone's horse that I had the opportunity to ride, Can of Gold. And I thought to myself, I think back to it, and I said, I shouldn't have been so honorable. And how records are set. I should have just broke it. Can of Gold won for fun, and I'm sure I could have won on him if the other rider won on him. And the stewards were going to let me do it, and I didn't do it. And now sometimes I think about it and say, do you have regrets? Well, it's not really a regret, but it's kind of a little regret.
It's the one that got away.
Yeah, no big deal.
It doesn't always pay to be the nice guy, right?
Yeah, just always been used to being a nice guy. Maybe by all riders, though.
And Tony, I already told you this before we were live, but just so everyone with us knows, my husband, Willie Martinez, I called him today and told him that our last minute guest jumping on and helping us out here would be Tony Black. And I said, "You got anything you can tell me about him?" He was like, "Oh, this interview is going to be great. He is one of the nicest people you could meet. He can talk all day long, has great stories. The interview is going to be great." But also that he is one of the best, sneakiest race riders in the game. And I mean, I think you're kind of known for that, right?
Yeah, I was taught by old school riders like Chris Rogers, Walter Blum, Frank Lovato, the old man, and riders like that. And the one thing they used to always tell you, if you can always ride a race, and you might not always want to be on the rail, but you don't want anybody coming through on you on the rail. It's almost like something that someone gets through on you. It's almost like it's a disrespect for what you do on that horse's back, letting somebody through. But that's the way the old school riders did it, and I always had the idea of if I was in front and the rail was not the place to be, because some tracks the rail would be dead and you wouldn't want to be near the outside, but I would always leave the rail open enough to where if someone wanted to come up in there, they would think about it, trying to save ground. But before they would get there, I would make sure that I gave them the idea of coming through is not the place to go around. So I always liked riding speed horses, because I always felt like I like riding horses that I make everybody go where I've already been, and that's the way I looked at it. I'll make you go where I already been if I'm in front, and I will leave the rail open to some degree, but it's not the place you want to go if I catch you thinking about going there. Then if you come around me, I would like to float you out a little bit, but do it within the rules of and what's acceptable. I don't want you to, but I'll head you out a little bit. And then when we turn for home, I might drop back in and leave you out there for a little bit and cost you momentum. But that's the secret and the key to riding speed horses. Now, I won races that were many a race. I won 5,212. So not all of them were speed horses. But I really enjoyed riding horses that had speed. And every once in a while, you'll get a horse that doesn't really have a lot of speed, but you'll warm him up and you put him in the game early in the race, and he'll respond in a positive way. So some horses, even that haven't showed speed, at times you can make them show some speed. And if it's a race where there's not a lot of other speed in there, you can get your horse up front, and walk the dog, as they say. So speed is something that's always dangerous, but also knowing the bias of a racetrack is very important too.
Sure. Well, that's why you're one of the most winning jockeys of all time. You know how to get extra out of the horse, you know how to play the game. So that's awesome. And I have to mention again, like I did before we went live, I watched your race today where you won the Pennsylvania Derby on Devil's Honor, and you kind of floated Mike Smith out. And I mean, your riding really won that race. I mean, of course, the horse had the talent to get there, but you are a big part of that successful win. So it was so awesome. For anyone who hasn't seen it, look it up. It's on YouTube. Great race.
And Devil's Honor had a stablemate in contention, and we ran in contention in the Kentucky Derby, but Devil's Honor was far best of its stablemate. And Devil's Honor won the prep to the Oklahoma Derby and then finished third in the Oklahoma Derby, but got bothered. Not got bothered, got cut down. And it took quite a while to get over, his injuries from the race. And I always thought, man, I wish I could have ridden Devil's Honor in the Kentucky Derby and not his stablemate in contention. And then Devil's Honor, of course, later on that year came back to the races, won a prep race, and then he just did his number in the Pennsylvania Derby in '96. But I thought to myself, if I ever had a shot of winning the Kentucky Derby, it was Devil's Honor. And I only rode in it twice. The best I finished was fourth in '81.
Hey, that's pretty good.
It was 21 horses in it that year because there was an entry, and somebody went to court and the judge said they would allow the entry to run. And instead of 20, I think it was 21. I believe it was in '81. But I finished second. It was on Vernon Winchell's horse. And Vernon Winchell always had a dream of wanting to win one of the Triple Crown races. And he come close that year. Pleasant Colony won it, and I got beat 5 lengths. But I always look at it. His son, Ron Winchell, has a horse named Epicenter.
Yes.
Yeah. And Epicenter, I always root for Epicenter. And, he's had some real tough races and seconds and thirds, and but he's a hard hitter. And Vernon must be looking down, and maybe he'll help Epicenter win his next start. And I think he's going to run. I forget where they said they were running him next, but I root for Epicenter just because of Ron Winchell and his dad, Vernon Winchell.
Sure. That's great. So you're known for race riding, like I said. So I was just curious, who do you see that's riding currently today that you think has that same kind of, mental game and just doing everything they can to get their horse the best trip? I mean, being safe, not putting anyone in danger, but making sure you've got the best trip.
There's several riders out there that really do the job, but there's one in particular that he started out at Parks, and I can remember him, a little kid walking in the jock's room. He looked like he was about 14 years old and even 15, and he said he was 16. So I believe he was. But Franklin is one of the leading riders over there now, and Frankie does that kind of a job. But Frankie was a good student. He rode around me from the very first when he started riding, and he knew, he would look at me and says, it's not always, you always leave the rail open, but nobody wants to come through. He says, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they get through, but more chances than not, I'm going to leave it open, sucker you to go think you're going to get through. You're going to have to come around, and then I'm going to float you out. And I see Frankie doing that. And then I see other riders, successful riders. We have an older rider, and I'm thinking, I have trouble calling these kids older riders, because I can remember when Joe Bravo walked in the jocks room. And he rode a lot around Parks, Jersey and Pennsylvania, and he's out in California. Yeah, he's in California now. But those guys were all good students. They watched a few riders ride that were winning races, and they tried to take bits and pieces from those riders that fit their style. And they tried to take the best from maybe Black or from name a ton of riders, and they would put their game together. And that's basically what it is. When you're out there, you have to, of course, think, but you have to almost be instinctual, and that leads me to thinking about something else. But you have to have instinct. You have to know what you're doing on your horse. You have to know what's going on around you, but you also have to have a feel for everything that's going on around you and everything that your horse is doing. And that's something that riders, they develop or they naturally have. And instinct is part of this game, as any athletic performance. Instinct and knowing what's going on around you is very important. And that's why when we get to talking about some of the rules that are coming into play in this day and age, like how many times you can use a whip, well, that's taken a person and penalizing him for instinctually feeling like he's using his whip in a useful way, not an abusive way. But not saying abuse doesn't occur. But what you need is people monitoring the sport that know the difference between use and abuse. And if they know the difference, they'll pull that jock up without a rule that says he used it in an abusive fashion. It would be like taking a boxer and saying, when you're in the ring, after 3 jabs, you either got to throw a left or a right.
Right.
3 jabs, and now you got to throw an overhand.
Yeah.
4 disqualified. No, that's instinct. That's knowing your sport. That's knowing what you're doing as a boxer, as a jockey. You're riding with some of the worst races I rode was trying to ride according to strategy that I was imposed on me in the paddock. Like, take this horse back. Whatever you do, I want you so far back. And I want you to make one run, and I want you to be on the outside, or I want you to be on the inside, And they were the races that I really screwed up by trying to follow strict orders. Now, one race I didn't screw up by not following orders was I won the Caesar Rodney Handicap, a $200,000 race at Delaware Park, and Christophe Clement said, "I want this horse on the fence. Don't get off the fence. Whatever you do, I want you on the fence." I stayed on the fence till I came to the last the 5/16 pole, coming to the head of the stretch, swung around 2-3 horses, drew off and win a $200,000 race for fun. He won for fun. 2 weeks before that, Jose Santos was following orders, I guess. He came down the stretch at Monmouth Park with a handful of horse and no place to go. I said, that ain't going to happen to me. But sometimes you do follow orders, and sometimes they work. And a lot of times, though, if you take your instinct and what you're feeling and throw it aside and strictly try to accommodate those orders, you usually screw the race up.
Yeah. Well, I love your analogy about the boxing. I think that's the best one I've heard as far as the HISA whip rules and race rules. I love that. I'm going to remember that one. But I thought it was funny. You were mentioning how you mentored these guys that you still think of as kids. And you were kind of indicating earlier you felt that way about my husband, who is 51, who had the bug at Garden State with you. And he said, oh, he taught me so much. He said he schooled on me.
But he was a guy. He had such a great attitude. If you left it open and he came up in there and then he had to go around and never came back and complained or said, "What the hell are you doing?" Some guys take it to heart, like you're personally doing something. One thing about Willie, he could dish it out, but he could take it, and he was a pleasure to ride with. And man, 51.
Yeah.
So 71, and I'm saying, man, 51. When we're talking about the whip rule, I just saw something interesting with HISA. Where a judge handed down an order, an injunction that West Virginia and Louisiana do not have to implement these HISA rules at this particular time. It put them on hold, and I guess they're appealing the judge's order, or the injunction, or whatever, where HISA has been put on hold in Louisiana and West Virginia. So maybe we'll make some headway there. Where HISA, we'll have to reevaluate. We'll get a chance to reevaluate what's going on.
Yeah. I think that's what everyone wants. I don't think people have a problem with the rules being universal. I think they just want more horseman input. So
heard, this is what I heard. There were some people that were going to give horseman input, like Johnny Velasquez was there, but I heard through a good source whatever he said was ignored. So
of course,
did they just have horsemen there or input from Johnny Velasquez just to pacify everybody, or were they really going to listen? I heard they didn't really have much to say about what Johnny had to say. They didn't really listen to anything he had to say. That's what I heard. Don't know if it's the absolute truth, but I can understand that might happen.
So Tony, for your comeback race where you're trying to get that win and set the record, are you eyeing up a horse? Have you talked to some trainers?
I got one trainer that's over there, and I don't want to put him on the spot. He says he's got 40. He says just pick one. So I guess after 34,000 races and being on 100,000 horses, I should be able to pick one out of 40. Win and be put in a spot to be competitive, I think.
You've earned your stripes.
Yeah, I pick one out of there, but we'll see. We're going to work on it. I'm going to really start getting on more and more horses and really paying attention.
Did you think about how you're going to do the whole 6 strikes, or are you just going for broke and whatever they find you, they find you?
No, I'm going to abide by it. I think it's ridiculous. But you know what? If you don't abide by the 6 strikes, at this particular time, I mean, it's going to penalize the jockey, but it's going to penalize the betting public. Did you see where they disqualified the horse at one?
Yeah, they did that by mistake, actually.
Oh, I thought it was they were allowed to do that if they disqualify.
But they do penalize the owner, right? They take the purse. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Purse. They take the purse. So no, I guess you got to abide by it. I'm not one that want to break the rules. I kind of bend them a little bit, but I never want.
Another mistake we had. Looking at your stats, you look like Hall of Fame stats. You're not in the Hall of Fame, correct? You're in Philadelphia's Hall of Fame.
In this day and age, you have to have won Derby, Preakness, Belmont, Breeders' Cup races to really be in the Hall of Fame. I know another rider that I can't understand why he's not in the Hall of Fame, and he's passed on, but William Passmore. What a good guy. He mentored so many kids. Chris McCarran, Kent DeSarmo. I was riding in Merlin when Bill was he was the Fox. That's what I watched him ride. He was an older rider when I was a young up and coming rider in the 70s. You know, he was an older rider in the 70s. He probably started riding in the early 50s, late 40s. But here's a guy that won many a race, but he never won a Derby, Preakness, Belmont, but he was a pillar of the turf. That's where he should be considered for the Hall of Fame, pillar of the turf. You know, here's a guy that set a good example to young riders. Here's a guy that was set a good example for horsemen, had the horseman's respect. And me, I just rode a lot of horses, and I didn't win any Triple Crown races. There are riders that got in there that didn't win Triple Crown races, but it was a different day and age. My uncle's in the Hall of Fame, Sam Bomitas Senior, not Junior. Junior, that's a sad story. I mean, he's paralyzed. What a tough kid. But Sam Bomitas Senior's in the Hall of Fame, and he won, 30-some hundred races, and never won a Derby, Preakness, or Belmont. But he was also a person that set a good example for riders to follow. He mentored many riders. He was and he just passed away earlier this year. But he mentored many riders, and he was a rider that the horsemen respected, that managements respected. So, yeah, I guess you don't have to win a Derby, Preakness, or Belmont, or Breeders' Cup. But in this day and age, it's different. You really almost have to win major stake races.
Another one of the young riders that came in, and we talked about him before, Jeremy Rose, he actually has come back and started riding again.
Yeah, just saw him. I did a show at Delaware just earlier this week, and just Thursday. And Jeremy, I saw him. It looks good. Man, looks good on horses. And of course, a picture of health. He walked up to me kind of behind my back. See, he was a Pennsylvania State wrestling champ. And I was a New Jersey district region, but never won states. I choked in the states. But anyway, he come up behind me and he goes and puts a hold on me. And I thought, Jeremy, it's you. I know it's you. Because nobody knows that move unless it's a wrestler. He said, oh, back. He said, I thought I could sneak up on you. I said, no. And then I got to talking to him. But what a good guy, and what a good, when we were mentioning riders, young riders, I can remember in 2000, I was riding at Delaware Park, and he walked into the jocks room, just a young kid, to ride his first race. And
wow.
He's went on since then. But he even told me, he says, I watched you ride. You were one of the people that I watched and learned from. And that's such a compliment. Here's a kid that won the Derby and the Preakness, or was it Derby and Belmont? No, the Derby and Fleet
I think it was
Alley.
Derby and Preakness. Yeah, Derby and Preakness, I believe.
Yeah, whatever. He won 2 out of 3. But what a good rider. He's always maintained contact with me. And then when I went to Delaware to do that radio Thursday, it was a pleasure to see him. And he looks good, and he's riding good, and he's got a lot of winners left in him.
Do you have any other younger kids that you see at the track that you think will be superstars in the coming years?
Geez, you caught me off guard. I'm sure there are. That bugs me, because somebody will probably see me there and say, boy, you could have mentioned my name. But, there's so many kids out there, and a lot of them are when you're not in that jocks room every day, a lot of them just become faces and names that you have to put together again. And
Yeah.
you don't see them every day. And I'm kind of like out of the jocks room loop. But yeah, kids like that are riding good. There's kids that are riding good that have had other setbacks. We have a kid, Michael Sanchez, rides good. But there's also different things that affect a person's career, but it doesn't take away from them being good riders, good athletes. And being a good riders, part of that is being a good athlete. The one thing that really people don't understand, being a jockey is a highly physical, athletic event. It's not just sitting on the horse. And then people say, what do you mean it's an athletic event? The horse is doing all the work. No, jockeys, unless you haven't, you can only say that if you've never ridden a thoroughbred. If you've ever ridden a thoroughbred, you know how fit that person that's on his back has to be to stay in that aerodynamic position, to not interfere with the horse's stride by using your weight improperly, by not interfering with the horse's stride by not pushing and not being in rhythm with him. You know, it's a highly physical athletic event for two athletes, animal and human. People don't think that.
Right. So Rich and I always debate. Now Rich ain't here, but he always says it's, you know, a lot of people say it's 90% horse, 10% jockey, maybe even, you know, even more than that. What do you think?
Well, I always give most of the credit to the horse, but in doing that, it's because they have to have the innate ability to run fast enough to win. You know, you can't give a jockey can't give a horse more propulsion and ability than what they have, but you can at times utilize it efficiently and effectively. That's the jockey's job, to utilize not just himself, but to utilize that horse efficiently and effectively to gain the most forward position you can gain. And also to utilize that horse in a way, when using him efficiently, at times try to compromise another jockey and horse's ability to run past you. You know, compromise their trip by, but within the rules of racing, you know, by it's an intimidation. It's not even an intimidation. Some horses don't like running on the inside, so you put them in a little tight. You know, the if he's your opponent, if you know your horse doesn't like running on the inside, you want to give him an outside strategic position towards the outside. You know, but it is actually when it comes down to who gets the most credit, I give it to the horse. But of course, a jock has to be physically fit. When you're pushing on them, you're helping them in their stride to extend it to the max. You know, when you're pushing on them, and when you're sitting on their back, you're not sitting. You're purchased. You know, you're not your body. The only part of your body that's touching is the size of your legs and your feet and the iron and your hands. But you have to be in motion with them, in rhythm with them, and you have to push on them to help them extend their stride. And you don't always steer with just the bit in their mouth. You know, you don't want to just say, "Oh, I'll pull them right or go right. I'll pull left or go left." No, you use a little bit of you know, finesse, a little bit of rein. And this is according to the horse, of course, a little bit of rein and a little bit of body motion to move them out, or a little bit of body motion to move them in. You know, you're not just steering them like it's a steering wheel in a race car. That's not what your reins are doing. You're using the reins and you're using your weight in a way that's helping to guide that horse. So it takes a lot of physical fitness for a jockey to maintain that position. You know, it takes muscular fitness and then respiratory fitness. It's very important. You really are an athlete, believe it or not. And I know people don't believe it. Jockeys are truly one of the fittest athletes out there. They're not only fit, muscularity and respiratory fitness, they're probably leaner than most of them are leaner than they really have to want to be if they were just living a normal lifestyle, you know. So,
And you've talked about it too. It's a lot of mental game too.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of mental finesse that go into being a jockey. I mean, you're out there with sometimes 4, 5, 6 other riders, sometimes 12. And, you know, you don't have rear view mirrors, but you do have peripheral vision. So you want to be able to know approximately where your opponents are if you're on the lead. And if you're not on the lead, you want to know what are they doing in front of you, you know. And then on top of that, you want to know what they're doing in front of you. You want to have a sensation or a feel for how fast are we going or how slow are we going. You know, I just told a kid today when I watched him ride a race, I said, you know, you strangled that horse, and didn't you, were you following orders? He said, yeah, the trainer told me take him back and make one run late. I says, yeah, but the pace didn't indicate that. He says, I knew you were going to say that. I said, well, when they go in 24 and change, going that distance of ground, you're strangling your horse, you're just taking him back off a slow pace and giving him more to do in the latter stages of the race, where if you were laying closer, you'd have less to do. He says, yeah, I thought I rode a bad race. And I'm not even going to tell you who this kid is. But he said, but and he agreed. He says, yeah, he says, but I want to ride for this guy. And he told me what to do, and I tried to follow his directions. I says, well, don't throw try to follow directions when they are unfolding in front of you in a way that it's easy to follow them. When you got to force it, you usually ride a bad race. Whenever I tried to follow a strategic plan to the T, I usually screwed it up. When I threw my instinct and my sensation of what I'm feeling the horse is doing and what I'm feeling on that horse's back and what I'm feeling going on around me, when I threw that aside, I really screwed it up. So try to follow directions, but don't overdo it.
This is great. I mean, I'm married to a jockey, and I feel like I've learned more about race riding in the last half hour than I have the entire rest of my life. So thank you so much for all of these informative tips and tricks.
Well, you got to understand, this is just Tony Black's opinion. Basically, I was born on the racetrack. I lived on a farm until I was 9 years old, and then moved to a community, and that was 2 miles from Garden State. The reason I graduated high school, I'll make this quick because I don't want to beat your ears. The only reason I graduated high school was because I was wrestling, and my wrestling coach in my junior year, I'm ready to ride races. I'm going to quit school. He says, don't. He says, go to Garden State, gallop horses till 10 o'clock in the morning. Come here at 10 o'clock and go to your first class at 10 o'clock and go out for wrestling, of course. And he said, and you will graduate. And that's how I graduated. I galloped horses from, then they would open up the tracks in the morning before it was daylight. So I galloped horses, it would still be dark. I'd get to school at 10 o'clock and my history class was my first class, and my history teacher said, I know you've been working since 5:30 this morning. Just lay your head down on the desk. But just listen. So I listened, and history was my favorite subject. I even got a B.
Great. It worked out perfectly.
Yeah, but I'll never forget Miller Preston, the wrestling coach, and he was the head of the math department. And I said, well, Mr. Miller Preston, you taught me one thing that was very important. You taught me how not to quit something you're supposed to finish. And being a jockey, many a time you'll get in part of your career where it's really tough, and it maybe will make you want to quit, but you don't, because I didn't learn how to quit high school, and I didn't learn how to quit something I was supposed to finish because of Miller Preston. And I told him, I don't know about your geometry class, what I learned. He said, I didn't have you for geometry. I had you for algebra. Doesn't make much difference to algebra and geometry. It's all Greek to me, and but I'm Greek. Hey.
Great. All right. Well, did you have any other questions, Shawn?
So I'll just say, and you're probably going to say none, but what was the most challenging part of a race for you? Or what was the part that you had to think about the most?
Probably going long to be getting into a comfortable position that would put you in a strategic position going down the backside. Because now you have going down the backside, you have plenty of time to make adjustments. But you want to make sure that you're in a position going around the first turn that will allow you to be in a position that is to the advantage of your horse. But one of the tough things riding horses is accommodating that horse and accommodating his quirks. That's one of the toughest things about riding at times. Some horses are push button, man. It's anybody could, guide them and do whatever you have to do on them. But then there are other horses that have quirks, and you'd get post positions that didn't accommodate that horse. Let's say it's a horse that didn't like dirt in his face. He's got just strategic speed, but not a lot of speed, and he draws an inside post. Well, now you have to adjust, especially if it's going short. You have to adjust right away, because if it's a 5.5 or 3/4 race, you have to adjust right away, because you have to get him in a position where he's not going to keep losing position. You got an inside post, he's getting dirt in his face, and he hates it, and he's going to keep sucking back, and you got the 1 hole. Well, that's a tough spot to be in, but riding according to what accommodates your horse's quirks or strengths is sometimes the most important and sometimes the toughest thing to accommodate.
Well, you sound like my favorite kind of rider. When I used to train, I always wanted smart riders. The ones who make the right choices and don't just, I love smart riders. So that 100% defines you.
Well, you know what? And I had people that I rode for. The one thing I would come back, I'll never forget the one guy I rode for 30 years. I'd come back. It was Walter Reese, and he was a great guy to ride for. But I'll never forget early in our connection, I came back. The first time I ever said to him, I said, Walter, I really screwed that up. And I'm figuring he's going to jump on me. I should have won this race, Walter. I really am sorry. I really screwed it up. And this was I was fortunate enough to ride for people like this. You know what he did? He looked at me, he says, maybe you won't next time. And that's how you built a relationship with somebody that didn't put you under the gun every day race. And he had confidence in me and I had confidence in him. And I would go out there and think, he would, he might give you some kind of, that horse got speed, this one's got speed, do what you want. Never gave me orders. And we did good. And I don't, well, I win the Pennsylvania Derby for it.
Worked out pretty good.
Right, but I miss those guys. I was fortunate enough to ride for guys like Walter Reese, Bob K. Mack. There was another man that just passed away yesterday, and I won a zillion races for him. Donnie Reeder. He was a mainstay trainer at Parks, or Philadelphia Park in Keystone. J.J. Gracie, another guy I rode for, never gave me orders. But and if they did, you tried to follow them. But if you didn't follow them, you weren't under the gun. He said, JJ, just wasn't working out. I had to do something different. Okay. But I'll never forget Walter Reese when he says, well, maybe you won't next time. To this day, I still remember that. And that had to be, maybe that was 35 years ago. Maybe you won't next time.
Awesome. Well, Shawn, you got anything else?
No, just to elaborate, they're too quick to pull the trigger nowadays on just switching riders as soon as something doesn't go right with their horse.
Yeah. This one little kid, he's a young rider I was talking to, he's at Delaware, and he was telling me, look at this race, and I watched it, and it was a race where he didn't do anything wrong. The horse wasn't handling the grass. He was over his head, and he says, geez, they took me off of this horse, and it won. They dropped it, cut it in half, and it won. I said, that's the tough part of the business, Rosie. I said, that's the tough business. They cut him in half, put him on the dirt, and he won. I said, well, that's going to happen again and again.
That's another thing I never understood. I feel like so often you'll see for a big race or just for some minor little error that they think occurred, they'll take off a rider who's been with the horse for a long time to ride the leading rider somewhere or one of the top riders. I just don't understand that because that guy has 7 chances to win today. Your horse doesn't mean anything to him versus this guy who's been working with your horse, knows your horse. This might be his only shot to win.
Yeah.
And you're going to take him off, I don't get it.
It's a tough business. And, riders, at times, they mess things up and they pay what you're saying, it's hard to swallow that bitter pill, but you just got to keep going on as a rider. You can't do anything. They take me off. I'm sure I got taken off a lot of horses I rode that came back and won. And then I guess I got taken off a lot of horses that I got taken off of didn't come back and won. They were easier to look at. The man didn't say it was easier to look at. Well, I guess it wasn't me, boss, huh? But it's a tough business. And it's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks in this business. And here we are in horse, not playing football. It's a tough business.
Yeah,
absolutely. You're not in the Hall of Fame. You're not in the Hall of Fame, and you should be. So it's definitely a tough business.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm in my own Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. You're in our Hall of Fame too.
Of course.
But there are riders that have been overlooked. There was a horse I was riding real quick. I hope you have just real quick story. There was a horse I was riding that for years was never in the Hall of Fame. And she beat Bold Forbes in the Voss Bird. She set track records. She beat She won going long. She won going short. I won on her against boys, girls, and her name was My Juliet. And I mentioned it on the radio on Steve Bick's show one day, and he says, "Really, she's not in the Hall of Fame?" I says, "Go look up her record." And then I can't think of the one person that was connected with Hoskins. Haskin. Steve Haskin looked her up, and he says she's not in the Hall of Fame. He says we're gonna put bug in some people's ear. She should be. She's done everything. She beat the boys. She set track records. She won going long, short. She beat Bold Forbes in the Vosburg. And an angel claimed foul on me that day. It was one of those days. The inside was open, but I'll float you out. And he claimed foul. I'll never forget it. They took him down. He was second because he bothered somebody leaving the gate, and I was in front doing my usual Tony Black ride, and he claimed foul again. They left me up in the Vosburg. He was on Bold Forbes, and they took him down. And I always kid him about him. I said, "Remember that day you claimed foul against me, Angel?" He says, and he looks at me. "I know claim foul." "Yes, you did. They took you down." We got a million stories. We don't even have to make them up.
All right. Anything else for you, Shawn?
That's it. Appreciate you coming on short notice, Tony. We're waiting for that ride, and we'll definitely have you on right away to talk about it.
Sounds good. I'll be looking forward to it.
So nice to meet you. You've inspired so many people. Thank you so much.
Okay, and when you go home, you give Willie a kiss from me.
Absolutely.
That black ain't changed at all. Give him a kiss from both.
Will do.
Amy, and you take care. Everybody have a good
Thanks.
evening.
You also.
too. Thank you.
All right.
Oh, you got that down. You got that down. You made me look at like Rick Fest.
I got one thing right at least.
You did fine. Did awesome.
Oh. Okay, so as far as racing news goes, so Asmussen and Rosario had the best week ever at Saratoga, sweeping with a couple graded stakes wins, setting another record. Speaking of records tonight, what was that? Jackie's Warrior in the Alfred G. Vanderbilt.
Yeah, a grade 1 3 years in a row at Saratoga.
Yeah. That's
a pretty big deal. That with Epicenter and Jackie's Warrior, Joel Rosario didn't move at all. So I can't argue at all that the jockey didn't really have to do much there, but he did his job. He just went along with the ride for those two.
You didn't get in the way.
Yeah, they were both very very impressive.
And Epicenter, always the bridesmaid, finally got to be the bride, right?
Yeah, and that's because I got off him. I thought the 4 was going to win that race. He was going to be the pace setter. I thought he went a little quicker than he had to. I know it was still modest at 24, but he didn't even have to go that quick. But it set up for Epicenter, and he was impressive. He was ready to go.
Yeah, very impressive. Awesome week for those guys. Oh, and I almost forgot. I had to give a little shout out because today my hubby won on a horse that they named after him. The horse's name is Extra Sexy Big Daddy. So thank you, Trombetta, and all the connections for that one. But I just loved it. When I saw he went on that horse, I'm like, ooh, I want to put this one on the wall. Like, this is going up. And then, so Chel-C Bailey, friend of the show, former guest, is moving her tack to Del Mar, right?
Yeah, I was a little surprised by this, but I mean, hopefully, there's enough mounts out there for her, and she does pretty good out there.
Yeah,
she's a strong rider. She's going to have to, I'm sure she likes the speed horses, so that will work because you want to be fast at Del Mar. That's what we talk about, the difference. Everybody that goes out to Del Mar, that's what they say. It's all coming out of the gate in the speed. So hopefully she does well out there.
Yeah, and she's got the mental toughness with that background to handle whatever comes her way.
She's not going to be intimidated or anything like that. It would just all be about the opportunity, and obviously her and her agent feels like they got the opportunity, so I'd imagine she'd take advantage of it, and she'll do well out there.
Yeah, I mean, if I had the chance to move to California, I would take it too. So good luck to her. Chel-C, we hope to see you back on, and with a lot of success coming your way. Oh, and then also, so I saw that HISA is now kind of backtracking on the toe grab situation. That was one of the rules that really threw me off when I saw it, that they were not going to allow any type of toe grabs on horses, which, you know, if you're on the synthetic or the turf, who really cares? But for some of the racetracks that I've been to, trying to imagine these horses running without toe grabs was like scary, honestly. I pictured horses, you know, slipping, falling, and all that. Well, apparently they had a meeting with like leaders of the industry, a veterinarian, a farrier, I forget who else they said, but they decided to allow toe grabs on the hind legs at least. So I'm just hoping this shows that they're willing to kind of reconsider some of the more crazy rules that the horsemen don't agree with and aren't on board with. I mean, I'm not completely anti-HISA. I'm not completely against the idea. I just think that things need to be modified. If we can work within that system to make rules that everybody agrees with, I think that would be the ideal situation. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. They need more people that have been in the game to throw their input in it, and that's where they're just taking whatever they want to do, and they're not understanding the ripple effect of it. That was actually supposed to start today, right? August 1st.
Yes.
The whole shoe.
Yeah.
And can you're gonna know more than me. Can you explain to the viewers more of what that
okay,
means?
So most horses run with shoes on. It's pretty rare to be barefoot, but I mean, I wish I had a shoe here to show you. So HISA was basically saying that the shoes need to be completely flat, which that's hard to do. If you've got like a deep cuppy track or a track that kind of slides out from under you, which some of these dirt or sand type tracks do, the toe grab just helps dig in and kind of give them something solid to push against instead of just kind of slipping. You know, I mean, imagine if you have like a flat shoe and then a shoe with like tread on it, or even cleats, you know, like it's going to be a big advantage to have something that kind of helps you grab a hold of that surface. So they were saying that they should not have any toe grabs on horses whatsoever. People were freaking out. I mean, that was one of the things that really freaked me out. When I saw the rules, I'm like, what? The 6 whip rule is a little strict. And then the toe grab thing, I don't really understand. But I was really happy to see them compromise on this. I saw a lot of social media posts where people are like, too little, too late. I already bought thousands of the other types of shoes now. So we'll see. But I don't know. Hopefully, I'm just hoping it's a good sign.
Is it better to have them on the back than the front?
Gosh, I mean, their whole feeling, I read a little article that they had released, HISA, and I guess basically they're looking at like these studies and statistics basically saying that toe grabs can cause more injury on the front, less injury on the back, which all of a horse's weight pretty much is on their front. So that makes sense. So, I mean, it's better than nothing. I'll take toe grabs on the back any day over flat shoes on all 4 if I'm on a dirt track or a track that calls for that. Like, hopefully HISA will, you know, talk to us more.
Yeah, exactly. And the good news is they're losing traction on all this stuff they want to do. So eventually, you know, it should even out and things, you know, like I said from the beginning when everybody was completely, and it's not my livelihood, so I understand why people are freaking out, but it was never going to be the end of the world or end of horse racing. I never believed that.
Yeah.
You know, they're not just going to come in. I mean, I guess it's possible, but I'm not I don't look at things, you know, glass completely empty. So hopefully, you know, things are moving in the right direction with it.
And we have to acknowledge that in some people's eyes, there is an image issue in horse racing, that we aren't concerned for the welfare of the horses, which is absolutely ludicrous for anyone who knows anything about horse racing or follows it at all. But, you know, it's nice to have it's nice to show everyone like, okay, we're trying to set uniform rules. We're trying to make sure that we're following these studies and whatnot, and that we're doing the best that we can for the horsemen and the horses. I like that. We just need to make sure the rules make sense. And Terry Houghton says it's better on both. I mean, agreed, but
yeah. So part of that too is that's just horse racing in these tracks that could educate the public more, and they just don't take the time to do it. If we could show everybody, how many jockeys have we had on and said if we could show everybody the whip or leave them feel the whip, they would understand that horrible sound you hear when they're coming down the stretch, it's not really hurting the horse at all.
That's it. That's the sound. Like the whole point of the whip is the
It
sound.
does, it does sound horrible when you're standing right there at the, but sounds are sounds. You'd have to, actually feel it and look at it to know that we've made a ton of improvement on the whips. Because I'm sure when Tony Black was riding, it was not like that.
Oh, yeah. It's worlds different. And I mean, there were definitely things that needed to change. But I mean, we also need to have a little common sense about it. We don't need to have the pendulum swing so far one way or the other. Just, do what's best for the horsemen and the horses. It's, mutually beneficial. It's not one or the other.
Absolutely.
Right.
So you did a great job.
Oh, no, I messed up bad, but we'll be back tomorrow.
Absolutely. You did great. We caught that we weren't live within the first 5 minutes, and Tony had no problem on repeating himself. Willie already texted me, said Tony's great, that you guys will have, you and I will have an opportunity to talk at some point. But that's what we want. We want the guests to come on and talk. We'll get plenty of opportunities to talk. So
he was fabulous.
Tomorrow you scheduled another great guest, Andy Biacone.
I'm so excited. I'll have to take a moment and just fangirl because huge fan of her, everything she does. Love seeing her on TVG. Love seeing her with her horses that she's an assistant trainer for and that she gets on. I mean, she does it all. She's awesome. So really looking forward to it.
And then Wednesday you scheduled another great guest in Jockey Scott Spieth.
Yes. Yeah. He's an old dear friend of mine and again, one of the most successful jockeys in North America. So he should have a lot to say. Been out there for a long time. He could also teach a master class on race riding. So,
And then Thursday, the Players Edge crew I scheduled today. We will be live with Mountaineer announcer Peter Berry to discuss the West Virginia Derby that's taking place on Saturday.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
And that's all I got.
Okay, that's it. Let me see if I can mess up something else. Hold on.
Well, you got to do the whole winner circle thing, too.
The winner. Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, so we hope to see you in the
winner circle.
Okay. All right. Okay. Goodness.